people always ask me what the secret to a long life is. And I never know what to say because the longer I live, the more I realize the question itself might be wrong. My name is George. I'm 84 years old, and the thing that keeps me up at night isn't regret about the hard times. It's the quiet realization that the happiest years of my life were the ones I spent wishing they were different. I was born in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everybody knew your name and half of them had an opinion about what you ought to do with it. My father worked at a mill. My mother kept the house and raised 4 children on very little, though we never thought of ourselves as poor. We just thought of ourselves as waiting for something bigger, something better, something that was surely coming if we were patient enough and worked hard enough and didn't ask too many questions. I carried that feeling with me for most of my life, this sense that the real thing was always just around the corner, that whatever I was living through right now was just the setup. The actual story was still ahead. I remember being 26 and standing in the kitchen of the first apartment my wife Carol and I ever rented together. It was a 3rd-floor walk-up in Pittsburgh. The radiator knocked all night. The window in the bathroom wouldn't close all the way. In January, you could see your breath in there if the heat hadn't come up yet. And I remember standing at that stove making eggs on a Sunday morning, Carol still asleep in the other room, sunlight coming through the curtains we bought at a secondhand store, and thinking to myself, we need to get out of this place. We need something better than this. This is not where we're supposed to be. That thought felt completely reasonable to me at the time. It felt like ambition. It felt like being responsible. Like I was keeping my eye on the future the way a man was supposed to. What I didn't understand then, and what took me another 50 years to understand, is that the life I was so eager to move past was already the thing I would one day miss the most. Carol and I did move. We moved several times, actually. I worked in insurance for most of my career, spent 31 years with the same company, moved up slowly, moved to a better apartment, then a house, then a bigger house when the kids came. We had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. And through all of it, through all the years of school plays and little league games and holidays and arguments and making up after the arguments, I kept that same feeling underneath everything. This sense that we hadn't quite arrived yet, that the comfortable life, the one I could finally relax into, was still being built. I retired at 68. Carol and I took a trip to Italy. We'd always talked about Italy. And it was wonderful. It really was. Florence was everything people say it is. We ate well, walked miles every day, stayed in a little hotel with a view of the Arno River. And I remember sitting on a bench one afternoon watching people pass by. And I thought, this is it. This is the good life. We finally made it. 6 months after we got home from that trip, Carol was diagnosed. She passed 2 years later. And in the years since, I've had a lot of time to sit with things. A lot of quiet evenings that I used to fill with television or projects, but now mostly fill with memory. And what comes back to me, over and over, are not the big moments, not the trips or the promotions or the milestones. What comes back is that Sunday morning in Pittsburgh, the knocked-up radiator, the secondhand curtains, Carol's voice from the other room asking if I was making coffee. I think about a Tuesday evening in 1987 when our youngest, Danny, was about 7. He came into the living room while I was reading the paper and just climbed up next to me and fell asleep against my arm. I didn't put the paper down. I kept reading. He was warm and heavy against my side, and I remember thinking I should finish this article. I had things to think about, work things. I needed to be alert in the morning. I finished the article. Danny woke up and went to bed. Life went on. But now I sit in that same chair, the one I've had for 30 years, and I can still feel the weight of him against my arm. And I would give almost anything to go back to that Tuesday and put the newspaper down. Not because I was a bad father. I wasn't. I was a decent father. I showed up. I provided. I loved my children. But I was always half somewhere else, half in the future, half in the version of things that was coming instead of the one that was already here. I think a lot of people my age carry something like this. Not exactly regret. It's harder to name than regret. Regret implies you did something wrong. What I'm describing is more like a slow awakening to something you couldn't have seen from inside it. You can't appreciate water when you're swimming. You only understand what it was when you're standing on dry land looking back. My granddaughter came to visit last spring. She's 29. Just started a new job, new city, new apartment. She's full of energy and plans and a little bit of anxiety the way young people are when they're building something. And she asked me, she said, "Grandpa, how do you know when you've made it? How do you know when you can finally stop pushing and just be happy?" I didn't know what to say at first. I sat with it for a moment. And then I told her, I said, sweetheart, I think the mistake is believing that happy is something you arrive at. I spent 60 years treating happiness like a destination. Like once I checked enough boxes, once the house was paid off, once the kids were settled, once Carol and I had that trip we always talked about, then I could finally exhale. Then I could finally just live. But it doesn't work that way. It never worked that way. The exhaling was always available. I just kept deciding to do it later. I'm not telling you this because I think you're making the same mistake I did. Maybe you're not. Maybe you already know how to be where you are. But if there's any part of you that's treating your current life as the rough draft, as the thing you're getting through on the way to something else, I want you to know that I'm 84 years old and I have lived long enough to tell you that the rough draft is the book. There is no clean final version. There's only this, what's in front of you right now, the apartment with the bad radiator, the kid asleep against your arm, the ordinary Sunday that feels like nothing yet. That's it. That's the whole thing. And I know that's hard to hold on to when you're in the middle of it. I couldn't hold on to it, but I'm telling you anyway, because someone should have told me, and maybe hearing it from someone who learned it the long way around will do something for you that it couldn't do for me. I still have good days. I have my children, my grandchildren, a garden I tend in the mornings, a dog named Henry who thinks I'm the most important person in the world, which I appreciate more than I can say. Life is still here. It's smaller and quieter than it used to be, but it's here. And I've learned finally to put the newspaper down.